Don't miss new episodes of So What Happened To, Saturday mornings on RatedEm.
The original Xbox is home to plenty of iconic games. From Halo Combat Evolved to Fable, hundreds of fan favorites can be found on this very console. However, there were multiple games that were set to release on the console that never saw the light of day. Some of these games are even from some big name series for the time. In today's episode of Game Graveyard, we're taking a look at a few of these games to see what could have been. Conker's Bad Fur Day was a platformer released on the N64, notorious for its cutesy facade hiding a plethora of adult jokes and themes. A remake was released on the original Xbox in the form of Conker Live and Reloaded. It gave the original a new coat of paint and had a third-person shooter multiplayer mode supported by Xbox Live. After the release of Live and Reloaded, a spin-off was in the works called Gettin' Medieval. It wasn't actually going to star Conker, but rather Greg the Grim Reaper as its main protagonist. It would have been a full game based on Live and Reloaded's multiplayer. However, as you can probably tell by the title, the game would have had a medieval, Dark Ages inspired look to it. The game was cancelled, but a definitive reason has seemingly not been revealed. My guess is that Microsoft wanted the game's developers, Rareware, to focus on a game for the upcoming Xbox 360, which likely ended up becoming Viva Pinata in 2006. In 2015, concept art for characters was revealed by Rare, showcasing its medieval-inspired art style. However, these artworks and the game's premise are the only two pieces of information made public about the game officially. Lamborghini was a cancelled racing game in the works by Rage Software and was going to be published by Majesco. I really don't think I need to tell you much about the game itself. I think the title tells you everything. If you thought this was like a fantasy, sci-fi, hybrid, hack-and-slash shooter RPG with roguelike elements and Marvel movie dialogue, I don't know what to tell you. What even made you think it was going to be that? Like, come on. The game was far enough into development to have a demo included in the official Xbox magazine in Europe, but in 2003, the game was cancelled. And this is because the developers, Rage Software, went bankrupt and were unable to continue working on the game. However, assets from Lamborghini were sold off to another company called Juice Games, who would then use those assets to develop Juiced for the Xbox, PS2, and PC in 2005. Many developers from Rage Software would jump ship to Juice Games to help develop Juiced. In 2022, a build of the game meant to test Xbox Live functionality would leak online, making the original game playable. BC was being developed by Lionhead Studios, the same developers behind ambitious titles such as Black and White and Fable. The game would focus on the player leading a civilization against the prehistoric world, with dangers ranging from floods caused by rain, volcanoes erupting, and even vicious dinosaurs. BC would have retained that cutting-edge gameplay DNA, where many gameplay elements would be multifaceted to create a deep and expansive world. There would have been plenty of attention to detail, from dynamic dismemberment of characters and creatures to ecosystem mechanics such as certain plants being poisonous and a food chain. The world itself was also going to be interactable to the fullest degree. You could cause an avalanche to crush wildlife below you rather than fight them head on. This may sound like a lot for the original Xbox, and the developers agreed. In 2004, although there was a lot of hype for the game, Lionhead decided to cancel the project due to it being overly ambitious. The developers wouldn't settle to cut anything from the game, deeming everything necessary to achieve the vision they had. They already had designed a refined world, it's just that the work required was too much, and the hardware wasn't capable.
Need a new form of entertainment in your life? Join the thousands of others who have considered subscribing. Side effects may include joy, laughter, and newfound knowledge about video games. Talk to your doctor about if subscribing is right for you.
Banjo-X was going to be a remake of the original Banjo-Kazooie, but with a twist, developed by Rareware. The game would have started off as a high-definition one-to-one remake of the first game, but as the story went on, the characters would have recognized that they're reliving the events of the first game and develop a sense of self-awareness. This would cause differences in the game's various areas, turning it from a remake to an entirely new adventure. There were some character models and animations made for the game which have resurfaced online thanks to a few artists who worked on the game. Alongside Banjo-X, Rare was developing a Banjo-themed kart racer, and the team found that project to be more unique and ended up scrapping the Banjo X project. The kart racing game would have its fair share of development struggles, forcing the game to be released on the Xbox 360 as Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. And if you haven't heard of that game, it was heavily criticized by fans for being extremely unfamiliar. Dead Rush was going to be developed by Treyarch and would have been published by Activision. The game was best described as Grand Theft Auto with zombies, where the player would be able to explore an open world using vehicles and then navigate the missions on foot. The player's car collection would have been able to be modified with various parts from scrapped vehicles, offering more protection against the horde of the undead. Dead Rush would have had a seamless open world as well, with the goal of having the game load once upon startup and then never needing a loading screen while the game was being played. It was initially revealed at E3 2004, but shortly cancelled after its showcase due to not meeting the expectations of Activision. After the cancellation of Dead Rush, Treyarch would help out with the development of Call of Duty 2 Big Red 1, and from that point forward they've mainly been stuck in the Call of Duty mines. Yet another Rareware game, Saberman Stampede actually has a good amount of history regarding it. Diddy Kong Racing released in 1997 for the Nintendo 64 and became one of the best-selling games on the console. A few years later, in preparation for the GameCube, a sequel was being developed titled Donkey Kong Racing. Donkey Kong Racing would have focused on more dynamic tracks to better fit the main gimmick of the game, the idea of not having traditional cars or planes but using the various animals seen in the Donkey Kong series as vehicles. However, after Rare was acquired by Microsoft, Donkey Kong Racing was cancelled for its GameCube release. However, Rare decided that instead of scrapping the project entirely, they would just reimagine it with their own IP. The game was reworked into Saberman Stampede, featuring the character from Rare's 1984 Saberman trilogy of games, those being Saberwolf, Underworld, and Nightlore. Rather than being a racing game, it would have been an adventure game, but still retained a focus on riding animals and utilizing them to interact with the environment. Because of it being a repurposed project, Saberman Stampede never really got the attention it needed to be fully conceptualized. Rare was also working on a multitude of other projects such as Cameo Elements of Power and Perfect Dark Zero, both of which would be pushed to the Xbox 360. These two original projects needed more hands on deck, so the Saberman team was divided up to help with each of the two games. Saberman Stampede was put on the back burner for the time being. Both of the aforementioned games would release later on the 360, and Saberman Stampede was forgotten about and then quietly cancelled. However, I do like to think that the animal interactivity mechanics of Saberman Stampede were likely an influence on the gameplay of Cameo, given that Cameo revolves around the idea of turning into different creatures that each have their own abilities for unique puzzles. So that was a handful of cancelled Xbox games. If you want to see more of these videos focusing on cancelled games regarding a whole console, let me know by leaving a like and commenting on what console you want to see covered.